Alright, I just need to set this up. I need to make sure the stream is on. And then, once that's done, I'm going to notify people that the stream is on. So just going to give it a couple of seconds. And the video is going to start shortly. The video is going to start shortly. Alright. So I need to test to see if this actually works. Alright, I have feedback. Let's see. So this lesson session is actually done directly from let's see, am I getting feedback? Alright, still getting feedback. I gotta lower this down a little. Alright, so this lesson session again is done directly via the app and Facebook both at the same time. So I have a couple of different things running. Bear with me. All right, I don't know. Hopefully, you can still hear me on Facebook. I'm not sure. Again, I'm still testing this out because I'm doing it from two things at the same time. So bear with me for a few minutes. All right. Can you hear me on Facebook? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm still setting this up to see, make sure that we're. All right. It seems. It seems like the streams are okay. I mean, hopefully Facebook is hearing me. Uh, Comment to say that you're not hearing if you're not hearing. If I don't see you comment saying you're not hearing, then I'll assume that you are hearing. Um, all right. So right now we're doing this across two platforms. One, you should be able to get it directly within the app. Just update. Make sure you update the app, and you'll see a button there that's called Live Streams. Just tap on Live Stream, and that will bring you onto this session. If you're on Facebook, I mean, like the page, and hopefully it'll send you a notification. I can't guarantee that you'll get that notification. That's why if you have the app, I'll send out a notification and you'll see that there is a live feed going on, and you can then stream live and you can join directly from within the app. Okay, so this is the first lesson that we're doing with both Facebook and the app. So today I want to look at quadratic equations, but before I get into quadratic equation, I want to first of all look at some terms, and the first term I want to look at is polynomial. So I'm sure you heard the term before, but what is a polynomial? In its simplest form, a polynomial is an expression or an equation that has the following properties. It is not divisible by a variable, right? It has an index of a positive or zero power. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by index of positive or zero power? It means that a polynomial can have a power of, can be this, 2x squared. It has an index of 2 or a power of 2. Excuse me. And the third property is that it cannot be a negative index. For example, this is not a polynomial. 3x to the negative 2 power. This is not a polynomial. So again, a polynomial is made up of several actually, you know what? A polynomial is not divisible by a variable. It has an index of positive or 0. And it does not have a negative power. So, this is kind of weird because I can actually hear myself on the Facebook stream. So I'm kind of distracted every now and again. So bear with me if you're I'm not accustomed to actually hearing myself when so I have the tendency to then correct myself if it doesn't sound right. All right, so that's a polynomial. Now, binomial is a polynomial that has two terms. Two terms meaning 3x plus 5. So it has two terms. It has this and then it has this. You can have a polynomial being x squared plus 3. So those are polynomials. It means it has two terms. And then you have the next thing we want to look at now, which is the main part of this lesson, is the quadratic equation and how you go about solving for the quadratic equation. All right. So a quadratic equation, in a quadratic equation, the highest exponent or the highest power of at least one of the term is 2 or is square. That is 2x squared plus 3x plus 4. That's a quadratic equation because the highest power here is 2. 4x cubed plus 3x plus 2. This is not a quadratic equation because the highest power here is 3. Okay? So in a quadratic equation, the highest power, the highest number at the top here is 2. Now, a quadratic equation has several parts. In fact, in solving a quadratic equation, you can separate it. So in the exam, right, you'll get this. You'll get the formula for a quadratic expression, right? And that formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now you'll get this in the exam. All right? They'll give this to you in the exam. The thing is, the trick is to know when to apply it. Now, when do you apply it? You apply it in the form of, well, they might say use the quadratic equation or the quadratic formula and solve for x. Or they might just say solve for x, but you got to figure out whether it's a quadratic equation or not. And I'm saying that to figure out whether if it's a quadratic equation, the highest power is 2. So examples again are 2x squared plus 4. That's a quadratic equation. Even though it doesn't have 3 terms, it's still a quadratic equation because the invisible term is basically 0. And I'll get to that shortly. But in a quadratic equation, the point is the highest value, the highest exponent, the highest power is 2. Now, this is your formula. This is the quadratic formula, right? You don't have x listed here. In fact, you have x only here. And you got to figure out a, b, c. You have a, b, c. So let's label your quadratic formula, right? Your quadratic equation. Let's label it. First thing you want to do is to figure out what is a, what is b, and what is c. Now in your quadratic equation you have, let's say 2. Alright, I have an example actually that I'm working with. And that example is x squared plus 3x minus 4 plus 3x minus 4 is equal to 0. So this is the quadratic equation that we're going to use as the example. Now I'm saying, right, that your quadratic equation, you have x on one side over here, and you have a, b, c. So we want to label this quadratic equation. What is a, what is b, and what is c? Now a is the coefficient of the number in front of the squared variable. Now remember we said coefficients are numbers that are in front of a variable, and a variable is the letter inside of that equation. Variable can take any form. If you don't remember what a variable is, on Facebook lessons that we did, there's some videos on the page that we did yesterday to define what are variables and so on. So in this case, the variable is x, and the coefficient, when a variable doesn't have a number in front, the coefficient is 1. A in your quadratic equation, a is equal to the coefficient of x, the coefficient of the squared variable, because you also have you have the same variable over here, but this variable is squared. So a is equal to 1. All right? The number in front of the squared variable, that's what a is equal to. B is the coefficient in front of the variable that is not squared. So in this case, b is equal to 3. And c is the constant, the one constant on the left side, or the same side of the equal sign as everything else. So c is equal to -4. Okay? So again, let's recap. At this point, we're saying that this is our quadratic equation. This is given to you in the exam. You need to know now when you want to apply this quadratic equation, if there's even a question on quadratic equation, how to go about solving it. They might say use the quadratic equation to solve the problem, and you got to apply this to, in this case, this example. Now again, a quadratic equation can also be in the form of 2x squared plus 3x. That in itself can be a quadratic equation, because in this quadratic equation here, you have a equal 2, that's this number here, b equal 3, that's this number here, and c is equal to 0. All right? You can also have a quadratic equation like 2x squared plus 5. In this case here, you have a equal 2, b equal 0, and c equal 5. Okay? The point is, in a quadratic equation, the highest power is 2. All right. So let's move forward in terms of applying this quadratic equation, in terms of solving this quadratic equation. All right. So we know this is our formula, and we now have our different parts. B is 3, so I want to put negative 3, right? That's what B is equal to, plus or minus square root of b squared, which is 3 squared, minus 4 multiplied by a, which is 1, multiplied by c, which is negative 4. Okay? All of that divided by 2 multiplied by 1. So up to this point, we've figured out what these ABC is from our example. We've substitute the values of A, B, and C in the quadratic expression, in the quadratic formula. So now you can go about solving this further. You have negative 3. Let's see. Hopefully I don't run out of space. All right, negative 3 plus or minus square root of 3 3's, that's 9, minus 4 1's 4, 4 4's 16, negative, so 4 by 1 is 4, that's a positive 4. Positive 4 by a negative 4 will give me negative 16. Right? Now notice I maintain the bracket, and that is important because here you have a negative sign, and whatever sign you have inside of the bracket, any signs inside of the bracket, you'll change. Whenever you have this negative sign like this in front of the bracket, for example, if you had 9 minus 4 plus 3, then you have 9 minus 4 minus 3. Whenever you have this negative sign like this in front of the bracket, you change all the signs inside of the bracket. Another example, let's say you have 9 minus negative 4 plus 3. Then you have 9 plus 4 minus 3. Alright? So whenever you're removing a bracket, and there's a negative sign in front, you'll change the sign. But my point is, maintain the bracket. So that way, you can know what you're doing here. See, if you didn't have the bracket, you might say negative 4 multiplied by negative 1 multiplied by, negative 4 multiplied by 1 multiplied by negative 4. It'll give you the same positive 16, but it's not necessarily correct. Because if this was a negative sign, well, I mean, it would be actually negative 4 multiplied by negative 1, which would give you positive positive 4 multiplied by that will give you a negative 16. Anyway, let me not confuse you with this. My point is basically that maintain the bracket. So when you reach to this part here, you'd see clearly whether you need to change the sign or not. Alright, and then you have 2 multiplied by 1. That would give you 2, all over 2. Alright? Now here you have is plus or minus. So the next part would be to break this down further. So you would have 3 negative 3 plus or minus square root of, I'm saying you change this, so this would give you 25, square root of 25, all divided by 2. Right? This now brings me to negative 3 plus or minus 5 divided by 2. Now this brings me to the next point, right? When you're solving for a quadratic equation, right, you will get 2 answers, right? And the reason being that when you have a quadratic equation, right, if you graph it, you end up with a curve looking like this. It's not a straight line. It goes up and comes down, goes up and comes down. That's the reason you'll end up and get 2 answers when you deal with a quadratic equation. So in this case here, you end up with negative 3 plus 5 divided by 2. And the next answer would be negative 3 minus 5 divided by 2. Okay? This one here will give me negative 3. This will give me 2 divided by 2. And this one here will give me negative 8 divided by 2. And therefore, my 2 answers for x are 1 and negative 4. So x is equal to, in this case, x is equal to 1 and negative 4. Sorry, for the people on Facebook. That was my phone. Let's see, it should change anytime on Facebook. Did it change? Here we go. All right. Yeah, for those persons on Facebook, again, I'm streaming on two separate platforms. One of them is directly within the app, and the other one is on Facebook. So there is a lag between the two. So my recommendation would be to get the app. If you get the app, then you can view directly within the app. I'm not sure where I lost the Facebook feed, but let me go this again from maybe from here. All right. So if you followed up to this point, right? You have -3 plus or minus 9. Change the sign in here. 9 minus -16. That would basically be 9 plus 16. That's how you get the 25. Divided by 2. Then you have -3 plus or minus square root of 25 over 2. So I'm saying that when you're dealing with quadratic equations, you'll always get two answers because you have two different operations that you got to do here. So one answer would be -3 plus the square root of 25 is 5 divided by 2, and then the other answer is -3 minus the square root of 25 is 5 divided by 2. So how do I get this 5? That's because the square root of 25 is 5. So here you have -3 plus 5, that will give you 2 divided by 2, and -3 minus 5, that will give you -8 divided by 2. This will give you 1, and this will give you -4. All right, let me just recap this again from starting. So you're given your quadratic equation. This is your quadratic equation, and this is your quadratic formula, right? And again, a quadratic equation doesn't have to have these three terms. You can have a quadratic equation basically has one of these variables with the power of 2. So you can have 3x squared plus 5. That's a quadratic equation. In this case, b would be equal to 0. Excuse me. You can have a quadratic equation that says, 3x squared plus 5x. In this case, c is equal to 0. Okay? The point is the quadratic equation, you have the highest power of the variable is 0. Of one of the variables is 0. At least one of the variables, actually. All right. So this is your quadratic formula. I'm saying that you have this is your quadratic equation. This is the equation that we want to solve. Right? The first thing you want to do is identify which part of the equation is A, B, and C. So you might want to just write down A, B, C, and then identify them. A is the coefficient of the variable that has a square, right? So here you have A. B is the coefficient of the variable that is not squared. Here you have 3. And C is that constant right here, -4. Now you can go about and put in the place of those letters in your quadratic equation, you can put your values. So we have negative b, which is 3. So you bring the negative and keeping 3 inside of the bracket. I'm using a bracket for 3. God damn it. Come on. Alright. Stupid thing on Facebook again. Alright, next time I'm just going to get my phone fully charged. Alright. Let me just make sure that the Facebook thing is up and running again. Alright, there we go. Alright, so I'm saying that you have your equation, you have your formula. This is your formula, and this would be given to you. Identify the parts of the equation that matches for A, B, and C. A is the coefficient in front of the variable squared. B is the coefficient in front of the variable without the square. And C is this constant over here. Now, if you're not familiar with the terms variable, constant, and coefficient and all of that, you might want to just look at the previous videos on Facebook. So I'm going to substitute now, because I know A, B, and C. I'm going to substitute them in the formula. B is equal to 3. So I have negative B plus or minus the square root of B square, that's 3 square, right? Minus 4. So this is the minus here. Where you want, if you want to know where you get a minus, is minus. I'm saying keep it all in bracket just in case, because then you might get confused in the end. Minus 4 multiplied by A, in this case it's 1, right? 4 multiplied by 1 multiplied by negative 4. That's what our C is. All divided by 2 multiplied by A. Alright? Here you have now negative 3 plus or minus 3 square, that's 3 multiplied by 3, that will give you 9, minus 4 by 1 is 4, 4 by 4 is 16. Here you have a positive 4 multiplied by a negative, positive 4 multiplied by positive 1, that's positive 4. Ah man, alright, this Facebook thing is becoming annoying. Alright, let me just take this out. Now hopefully I'm done before I'm done quickly enough and it doesn't cut off. Alright. Anyway, 4 by 4 is 1. 4 by 4 is 4. 4 by negative 4, negative 16. 9 minus 16, you change that basically. 9 minus negative 16. This will change, and so you end up with 9 plus 16. That will give you 25. All divided by 2. So now you have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of, when you work this out, you get 25 divided by 2. Negative 3, what is the square root of 25? Square root of 25 is 5. So negative 3 plus 5 divided by 2, and negative 3 minus 5 divided by 2. So I'm saying that whenever you have a quadratic equation, you will have two answers. You'll have a positive answer and a negative answer. So here you have negative 3 minus 5, that will give me negative 8 divided by 2. Negative 3 plus 5, that will give me positive 2 divided by 2. And my two answers are 1 and 4. All right, so I think that's about it in terms of quadratic equations. Hopefully you were able to follow. Let me see. I might have. Do I have any other examples to go through with quadratic equations? I don't think so. So the next lesson we're going to look at simultaneous equations. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to do that next week. I think we have a little bit of time to actually do this. So come again next week. We're going to look at the simultaneous equations. All right. Thank you.